Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today, as this is a Monday episode where we focus on a particular astrological topic or theme. And today we're going to discuss the energetics of Saturn stationing direct at 0 degrees 31 minutes of Pisces on November 4th, 2023. We have Saturn returning to where it was in March of 2023. And this is an opportunity to begin again, but with a higher intention, a higher connection to a spiritual frequency that truly supports you. And this is also where we look at, what do I need to do again, but this time do it with more maturity, responsibility, more of an understanding of energetics and what is at play. So we're going to be talking about this energy in today's show, and I would invite you to take a look at where you have 0 degrees of Pisces in your chart by house placement, because 0 degrees of Pisces is a point in everybody's chart, and this is where Saturn is hanging out and applying a pressure, especially if you have any planets or points at the early degrees of the mutable signs. So the mutable signs being Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. If you have any planets or points around 0 to 7 degrees, 0 to 7 degrees of the mutable signs, this has been important for you to understand what Saturn is showing you, what Saturn is teaching you, where Saturn is requiring you now to approach something differently, to show up with greater trust in yourself, and to also honor where you need to say no, where you need to implement boundaries that strengthen your energy instead of dissipating or diffusing the energy in ways that could actually not only drain you, but reveal what you have energetically outgrown. So between 0 to 7 degrees of the mutable signs is where Saturn has been working with you intensely for the first time in nearly 30 years. Saturn was last at this area of your chart back in 1993. As well as 1994. And so there's energies here where you're checking in on your own growth, your own life experiences, what you've been through, and how you've learned to work with energy. So let me break this down a little bit for you. Saturn is about our physical world. Saturn is the timekeeper, and Saturn is about how we approach our life and handle what we need to take care of. It's concerned with our physical reality, our boundaries, how we structure our life, how we realize what we need to do in order to be productive and feel accomplished, where we need to show up and take care of business and be responsible for what's on our shoulders. Saturn is often where we also have to go it alone. We have to do something on our own, in our own way, to learn more about our energy and our needs, and to also look at, how can I do this better? Saturn wants you to improve. Saturn wants you to excel. And the method to do so is through the hard work, applying yourself, moving through different life experiences that teach you as you go. Saturn is also the energy of things take time to develop, to build up to. Things take time to reap the rewards or to see how the energy will play out. Saturn is connected to how you own your own authority, as well as your relationships with those in authority, those who have more responsibility than you, those who are perhaps a mentor or a guide, those who know the ropes, who've been through various rodeos, those who are aware of how the real world works. And so this is where we can also have hard knocks. And Saturn does rule the school of hard knocks at times, where if we're not learning and applying, if we're not really committed or responsible with our energy, things can go sideways, things can get more challenging, It's almost like we aren't even aware of our power at times. And Saturn wants to connect you with your power of responsibility, your power of doing what you need to do, because that's the road you want to go down. That's the direction you want to head. And we typically think of Saturn as it connects to our professional endeavors in terms of how we want to use our job skills, how we want to perform in the workplace, what we want to be better at, how we want to be respected and recognized for what we bring to the table. Saturn wants you to stay the course in those goals, and Saturn wants you to keep thinking of the road ahead as well. So don't be too locked into one particular experience that you lose sight of where you're going or where you could go next. Saturn is ambitious. It is strategic energy. It is where you can perhaps even take a long view perspective on your professional goals or with your life, with your work, and how you want things to last, which is also another energetic expression of Saturn. How can I make this work better? How can this last? How can I excel at this? All things that come up with Saturn. Now, Saturn in Pisces is quite interesting because Pisces is about closures and endings. How we now have to look at some consequences when Saturn is in Pisces. How we need to take responsibility for our own idealizations. How we need to take responsibility for our spiritual path. Are you walking the talk? And that's part of what this energy brings up. Is how are you really integrating these Pisces energies of compassion, empathy, understanding that unconscious victim energies don't serve anyone. And so Saturn could be calling people out on where they have felt disempowered. And Saturn is the energy of now stand up and be in your power and do this in a way that supports who you really are with a deeper connection to your energy as well. Pisces, being the 12th sign of the zodiac, is about closures and endings, what we are completing in a way that allows us to move on, to move forward. And so with Saturn moving through Pisces, stationing direct at 0 degrees, there's new awareness of what is truly over for you. And maybe there were false starts. Maybe there were some things that fell apart or fell through since March, when Saturn first entered Pisces. And here we are back again at a similar starting point, but now you've learned something. Now you've moved through the first 7 degrees of Pisces, and something has been tested, perhaps challenged and fell apart. Perhaps you realized it wasn't as strong as I thought it was, or I wasn't as strong in that area of my life as I thought I was. Again, this is where you want to look in your chart at where you have 0 to 7 degrees of Pisces by house placement. It could be actually in 2 houses even, but this is where Saturn is showing you what is not working, what is not in alignment. And here we have an opportunity to begin again, but with a new perspective and a new vantage point. Pisces is an energy of duality between the human realms and the spiritual realms. And as we look at the Pisces symbol, it's 2 fish swimming, 1 fish swimming up, the second fish swimming down. And this represents as above, so below, where the energies of our human experience directly correlate to the spiritual energetics that we are tapped into. And once you learn something, once you understand what you were selecting consciously or unconsciously, what you were doing, what you were saying, everything that was tied up in that, then you have an opportunity to be your own teacher and to reflect on where could I have done this differently? Where could I have been better? What am I learning that now I'm ready to apply? So the Pisces energy is where we truly integrate our spiritual knowledge into our human experience that changes the trajectory of where we go and what we do. And this is especially applicable with Saturn in our real world choices, our selections, our behavior, our actions, our boundaries. So here Saturn is coming back, stationing direct and asking you to choose again, but with a new understanding of the energetics at play. Where, yes, there are consequences in Pisces, and there's consequences with Saturn. I mean, this can be big karmic experiences that you're learning from and you're learning through. These can be very significant life lessons where when you have greater understanding of the energetics, you can say, all right, I see where I went sideways on that, or I see where I could have done it differently. Pisces does want you to have compassion with your own growing experiences. Pisces wants you to be kind to yourself with what you're healing, with what you're understanding. But Saturn holds you to a standard. And the Saturn energy isn't going to go easy on you, but it is going to offer you new ways of learning, new ways of being responsible with your energy now that perhaps you didn't notice before. Another part of the Pisces energy signature is that we're ultimately meant to surrender the ego, surrender the human control mechanisms that we have, surrender the mind, surrender our expectations, and to just give it up and trust. Now, we've heard this a million times on a spiritual path. This is where divine timing comes into play. This is where when you surrender the energy, what you're also doing is opening it up. And that's part of the Pisces lesson, is to open up the energy, remove it from what your ego is attached to or what your mind thinks it has to have. Remove where you're even so locked into something that you won't budge. In which case the energy is very narrow. It's too focused. Things can't come through. Divine manifestations can't show up if the energy is locked, if it's small, if you're not willing to budge. This is an energy of opening it up, allowing that lotus flower to blossom. Whereas before, maybe there were things you were closed down to out of fear, out of not feeling safe, not trusting, not believing. And I feel like what this Saturn direct is doing is giving us a nudge forward. And it's stationing direct after the last two eclipses that stirred up change, that brought about things that you're ready to move into. These could certainly have been life-changing eclipses, which is the case for many people when eclipses work powerfully with your natal chart. It's more personal for you. It affects you in deeper ways, in more powerful ways. Whereas you might look around at your friends and they're just going about their life and they're happy and free and it doesn't seem like they have any changes going on, right? This is also how the universe keeps things in balance, where for all the ways that one person might be going through a lot of deep changes, someone else can be free and clear and just coasting along like nothing has changed. So think of it through the lens of energetic balance on the planet. So we just had two eclipses, and now Saturn is stationing direct at 0 degrees of Pisces, asking you to now move forward with greater energetic responsibility, greater awareness of what you're choosing, also greater trust in something that you are ready to let go of, to be free from, to release your expectations of it. This could be of a person, of a situation, of a job. Have you ever had that experience where you really, really want a particular job and you're waiting and you're so focused on it, and then the universe brings you something else even better? That's part of how this Pisces energy can show up if you're willing to open up the energy. This is where we practice this or something better. This is where we truly show up and say, I know I'm supported. I know the universe is traveling with me. My higher self is in this situation. And as I say this, I'm actually getting a visual right now of perhaps visualizing what the light codes or energies of your higher self looks like and allowing those to be infused into parts of your life or parts of your world where you have worry, where you have concern, and where you're stressed out. Allow the Saturn in Pisces to provide you with a direct connection to your higher self's essence, and allow that to be an energy that supports you, to allow you to move through anything that could be too much right now, too fearful, too uncertain. And part of Saturn and Pisces, as I mentioned, is that there are closings. There are things that end. They have served their time. They have served their purpose. And we're seeing this collectively and also individually. Pisces is where you might not know where to go. It's where you could feel that you're lost on the ocean. It connects to the rise in homelessness as we see an increase in rent and mortgages and inflation. It's where things can feel like the water is rising, the tides are rising, and there can be a pressure that comes with that we deeply feel and sense. But one of the ways that Pisces is gifted is learning to surf through the tides, learning to surf the bigger waves so that you can be flexible and adaptable, which is another strength of this mutable water sign. And so here comes Saturn wanting you to look at, are you being adaptable? Are you being flexible when things go one direction and you wanted it to go this direction? Are you able to adjust without letting it affect the long-term perspective? Are you able to still keep trusting what it looks like and how it shows up, even when it might not feel good, even when it could be a zap to your energy system at times? And now I'm feeling this energy actually tuning in to empaths and those who are highly sensitive. I'm feeling that this Saturn energy wants you to look at where you need to change any of your energetics or emotional process to sustain yourself more. Where perhaps you've learned, especially over the last 30 years, how your empathic energy works, how much of a giver you are, how compassionate you are, how much you love supporting people or being their cheerleader, how much you want to be there for others, but at what cost? Saturn in Pisces is asking you, what has this cost you? And what have you received in return? Or are you realizing how much your energy is out of balance and you need to establish new boundaries where you stop over giving, you stop over providing or overdoing, and you allow people to be in their own energy, to be the ones who learn through their own choices, their own wisdom, what is going on for them, without reaching over to try to save them or to make it easier for them. Of course, there's various situations, and of course, there's different ways this shows up. You know, if you have children, if you're taking care of your parents, that's different. Okay, so that's different than what I'm describing. What I'm seeing energetically is how empaths are learning that part of what, that part of what I'm seeing is that their energy directly relates to age of Pisces lifetimes. Where in the age of Pisces, which we are moving out of, there were times when you were honored for being the savior. You were really in your power when you could give and help others, but it was at your own detriment. It drained you. It really didn't support you, even though it felt good. And there were things that came out of it that was appropriate for that level of consciousness. I feel like there are tests here for empaths to move forward without thinking you have to rescue or save, without thinking other people's energy is your responsibility. Other people's energy is not your responsibility. And Saturn in Pisces stationing direct is going to ask you to check in on that for yourself, is going to ask you to look at what are you overly doing, overly managing, simply because it's how you've always been. But have you really seen yourself? Have you really seen the dynamics? Have you stepped back and truly observed yourself in various situations that you start to resent? You start to not feel good. You start to feel used or taken advantage of. It sinks you into a victim consciousness. And it's your responsibility to rise out of that. It's your responsibility to do things differently. It's your responsibility to know your limits. Saturn in Pisces wants you to know your energetic limits, where you need to say no thank you, where you need to say I'm going to pass on that, where you're going to stop yourself from automatically inserting your energy into situations or experiences that really aren't for your best and highest good, even if you've been on autopilot, even if you've been doing it over and over and you're like, this is who I am. Well, Saturn in Pisces wants you to check in on this part of your energy and asks you to look at, is this supporting you? Is this good for you? Is this wearing you out? Is this reciprocal? Is it mutual? And usually what happens with most empaths is that you realize it was one-sided. The energy was out of balance. But with Saturn is like, but that's your responsibility, sister. That's your responsibility. That's what you chose. You chose to give too much. You chose to take on all that. No one asked you to. So Saturn is stern here. Saturn is stern. And again, you could look back on the energetics from March when Saturn was last here at 0 degrees of Pisces and say, okay, what have I been through that I'm not really digging? It isn't really for me. It just has become an old cycle. What old cycle is being brought to your attention? And Saturn is giving you the stern look of self-responsibility and understanding that you don't have to take on things that drain you. You don't have to keep overdoing it. And what will happen as well, and again, I'm feeling strong empath energy. I'm feeling the strong energy signature of if you didn't do it, no one would. If you didn't show up, if you didn't get it done, if you didn't take care of it, no one else would do it. And I feel this across lifetimes, and I feel this directly related to survival energies. Like if you didn't go out and hunt, no one else would. If you didn't go to the well to get the water, no one would. Well, part of these energetic imprints were appropriate for that time and place. But what I'm feeling strongly is that it's time to shift it because we're not living in that energy field anymore. We no longer need to take on more than what we can really handle. As these Age of Pisces energies continue to dissipate and clear out, there is a new level of responsibility to yourself that also encourages other people to do the same. Where if you realize, yeah, I can't keep managing the PTA, or I don't want to overly volunteer for the HOA, or I don't want to keep showing up to places where my energy isn't respected, or I'm not being paid, or I'm just doing too much. Saturn in Pisces is about volunteerism. It's where you go to support a bigger cause, to help other people. And all of that is beautiful. That's certainly a good part of the human experience. But what I'm saying is to look at where it's draining you, where you're resenting it, where your energy is no longer pure and clean and clear around something. This is the reset. This is where we're back to zero. And you're understanding, I don't want to do that anymore. That isn't right for my energy. I really didn't get much out of it. I just don't think that's the way to do it now. I'm going to choose differently. So as Saturn stations direct, what are you choosing differently based on your own understanding of the energetics and based on your own responsibility to yourself and to your energy? And this Saturn cycle is actually quite significant because Saturn is traveling behind where Uranus was in Pisces from 2003 until 2010. Uranus and Pisces brought up a lot around spiritual awakenings and what the collective is learning through the growth of spirituality, of what it means to heal at the mind, body, soul level. So Uranus and Pisces was here, 2003 to 2010. Then we had Neptune and Pisces in 2011 until 2026. And I'm going to touch on that here shortly. But Saturn is traveling behind the territory that Neptune and Pisces opened up starting in April 2011. Saturn is also traveling behind where Chiron in Pisces was from 2011 until 2019. And then we've also had Jupiter in Pisces twice over the past cycle from the last time Saturn was in Pisces. So basically what I'm saying is that there have been a lot of changes in our lives in these Pisces energies. We've been undergoing what it means to let go, what it means to surrender, what it means to allow things to be complete, and what that looks like. It also means we've been required to deal with grief and our emotional process around letting go. And that for all the ways we can say that trusting is important and divine timing is at play, there's still parts of our human experience that will grieve, that will have a deeper emotional experience to move through, because loss can be hard. Loss can be hard on the mind, on the heart. Loss is hard on the ego, on the body. So there are many parts of our energy fields that have to process the letting go. And it's messy. It isn't easy. It's not linear. It can be a wild, crazy experience that can be all-consuming some days and then mild and clear next days. So we've become masters at working with Pisces energies in a way that we don't always seek and we don't always want, but endings are part of our life experience. Everything in your life is going to end. Every person you love is going to leave. Everything that you buy is going to be taken away, sold, or dismantled, or passed on. Everything is temporary. And Pisces wants us to master that at some level of our being, at some level of our consciousness. Everything is temporary. Nothing is here forever. And with Saturn here, the timekeeper, how are you approaching life? Understanding how sacred time is, that we don't get things back, that we only have today, we have the present moment. And what are you tuning into in the present moment that is also connected to not only your physical world, but your spiritual mastery? What are you connecting with that allows you to enjoy the human experience more because you know it's temporary, you know it's all going to change, you know that everything is always in transition? And when you call in that spiritual perspective, you can surf these waves with greater trust and grace. It's almost like you really can appreciate what you have in the moment. You really can appreciate who is in your life or what is in your world. You can really say, wow, I'm really grateful for what is here, because it's not going to last forever. Nothing does. And I feel like another important thing to note with the Saturn stationing direct and how it will move into new territory in 2024 is that this is a good time to give yourself a short-term bucket list. A short-term bucket list before the energies of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that will begin in 2025. When Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, and this will happen in the very early degrees of Aries, and then they both move back into Pisces. This is the next significant world-changing energy. This is where there's going to be a lot of things closing out, ending, dying, being removed. And this is where there can even be a lot of confusion, uncertainty, worry, and stress around what happens next. I will be doing a different podcast for you on this topic, but I wanted to give you a heads up because that's one of the beautiful things about astrology is that when we see what's coming on the horizon, the changes that we don't know about, things that aren't even clear, we can make the most of right now. We can make the most of today. We can make the most of what's in front of us. And we can do so with the zest for life, with the sense of appreciation, with the sense of understanding that this moment is all we have. I mean, you never know when you're going to have your last conversation with somebody. You never know if there's someone you're never going to see them again. You're never going to talk to them again. You closed the chapter, you ended the soul contract, the karma is done, and you move on. And that's part of this energy too, is to be very intentional, to be very aware. I also feel like this is where we can also look at matters of forgiveness, matters of acceptance, where you can accept yourself for who you are and you can forgive yourself for anything that maybe is weighing on you or weighing on your heart or weighing on your mind. You can forgive yourself because you knew you were doing the best you could. And maybe there's something here where you're also willing to apply that to other people. I feel like this strong focus on Pisces energy is showing us how we are able to really practice forgiveness and acceptance, how we are able to be compassionate. Now, this doesn't mean forgetting. This doesn't mean just letting people off the hook for any reason whatsoever, because there is a need for wisdom and perspective. It's almost like, okay, I can accept who they are, what they've done, what they've said. I can accept XYZ, but I also am clear on my boundaries, or I'm aware of what my standards are. And so you can separate out the two, where you can be forgiving and accepting of somebody, but that doesn't mean it's an energy match for you, or that you then allow them into your world or into your life, right? But there's something here where you're able to say, no, I get it. They are their own person. They have their own journey. And here we are, billions of souls on this planet, and we each are in our own timeline of experiences. We each have our own soul journeys, our own physical bodies, our own very intricate energy fields that make us uniquely ourselves. And we're bumping into each other and we're interacting with each other and we're trying to make sense of it. And it can just be this crazy soup of all these ingredients and all these things coming into play. And I feel like Saturn in Pisces, as it stations direct, wants you to come into deeper peace about what is. What will give you peace about what is? Not what you want, not what was. This is not sentimental. This is not hopeful. No, it's about accepting what is today, here, now, the lay of the land as things stand. And your ability to listen to that and to understand what that means for you will also signify where you're at with your spiritual mastery and integrating more of these higher energies. Saturn is a record keeper and a fact checker. I don't mean the fact checkers like the ridiculous ones on Facebook. I mean, this is fact check the energy. Fact check what has transpired, how someone shows up, how you really see them, how you show up, how you really see yourself. There's a grounded, practical reality with Saturn where you're not idealizing something. And maybe that's part of what this energy is take responsibility for your idealism or for what has been glossed over, or even something that was built up, like it was glamorized, which is also part of Pisces. And it's funny, as I'm saying this, I'm getting the example of an amusement park where actually this is Space Mountain at Disney World. And it's one of those roller coasters that you ride in the dark and you don't know where the track is. You don't know where the next loop-de-loop or spiral is going to be until the machine breaks, until there is a breakdown and people are stuck on the roller coaster. And this happens a lot, by the way. And they turn on the lights and then you look around and you're like, wow, this is not the mystical ride that I thought it was, because now I'm sitting in this bright light with all of these railroad tracks, and you look down on the concrete floor, you look up at the mess of metal, and it's the reality check of the ride you were on. It's the reality check when the lights go on. And I did a previous podcast episode for you about this same theme, right? When the lights go on in the club and you look around and you're like, this is not sexy. This is not enticing. Look at this gross place with these stains and the furry wall and the horrible lighting. So Saturn comes through and gives us a reality check on these Pisces dreamy landscapes that we've idealized and we think, oh, this is going to save me. Any message that you have about being saved is very much connected to victim consciousness and is also connected to age of Pisces energies, where no one has to save you. No one's here to save you. You got to save yourself. You've got to step into your power, step into your authority, step into your responsibility and your choices and level up in that way. That's what Saturn in Pisces is requiring. And in order to do so, there's things you're going to have to let go of. And that could be a false reality. That could be false concepts. That could be things that you over idealized or you over invested in, or you thought it was going to be like this and everything's going to be perfect and clean and you can just write off on your unicorn. So there's things here that we're meant to see in the light of day. We're meant to understand, especially how your energy has participated in it and how your energy has also maybe needed a certain experience to learn from it. And because Saturn is about karma and consequences, this is also the energy of rewards for what you've accomplished, where you've stayed the course, where you've stayed in your integrity. But it also could be revealing where that wasn't the case. And Pisces can be lies. It can be straight up lies. It can be big lies. It can be white lies. It can be escapism and how you try to get out of your responsibilities. And here comes Saturn grabbing your ankle, pulling you back to things you've got to take care of. You can't just disappear. You can't just leave and expect someone else to clean up after the party. So Saturn in Pisces is now direct, holding us responsible for things that you already knew. That's the thing. You already knew something, and you already knew perhaps that it was going to come back around or come back up, because that's your intuition speaking to you, and that's your intuition showing you that you're going to get an opportunity here to do this differently, to be in a higher frequency, to walk the talk, and to learn from whatever has transpired since March, that now you're saying, okay, I knew better. I can do better. I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard. And this will be different for every person. But this is also where you're setting yourself up for new manifestations. You're setting yourself up for something that's a better fit, for something that is in higher alignment with your truer path and with your spiritual growth. And this energy is beneficial for your planets or points in the early degrees of the water signs. So early degrees of Cancer, early degrees of Scorpio. Saturn is trining those planets or points, providing stability and energies you can trust in yourself, trusting the messages, trusting what is showing up for you, trusting as well that it's okay to have a do-over. It's okay to revisit something. It's okay to take a second look or to try again. And once Saturn is direct, it will move to 19 degrees of Pisces and then station retrograde the end of June 2024. So we will have 8 months of direct Saturn and Pisces energies, where Saturn will meet up for the second time with Jupiter in Taurus. And that will happen in February when both planets are at 7 degrees and they are going to do something in a new way, restructure, make it stronger, really bring together the pieces that will stick and grow from what has been learned in 2023. Then Saturn in Pisces is going to have an ongoing dance with Jupiter in Gemini, as they will have some things to discuss and figure out. This is where we're going to have to be more flexible, more adaptable, as well as minimizing our expectations, because this is going to be about short-term influences. When Saturn in Pisces squares Jupiter in Gemini a few times in 2024. Now, I discussed this in the 2024 Soul Growth Astrology program. We look at the dates and degree points of the Jupiter-Saturn squares and what is unfolding throughout this process, what's coming up for you in your own chart. So be sure and check out that program. It's still on sale, And when you use coupon code 2024, you get it for only $33. So I'll put that below the podcast here. So essentially, what are you ready to do differently? To do with new levels of wisdom? Maybe you cleared out karma. Maybe you cleared out some things that you understood you didn't want to carry forward. Maybe you met your own victim consciousness in the mirror. Maybe you saw where you were overgiving or overdoing. Whatever you've been learning with this Saturn and Pisces energy in your chart, this is a new day, okay? It's a new day where, yes, you take the preceding days and you understand that the preceding days have good things to teach you and show you. But now you can begin again, and with a new acceptance of what is, as well as a new strength in yourself, a new strength in your energetics and in what you're ready to practice more regularly in your life. We'll keep talking about these energies in my Wednesday podcast, which is where we discuss the weekly astrological energies. And I also will have a podcast episode for you coming up on the conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in early degrees of Aries, and then also how they're traveling together in the late degrees of Pisces. So again, have a short-term bucket list for yourself from now until about mid-2025. What do you want to experience? What matters to you? What do you want to call in or put energy into? Give yourself that short-term bucket list. Maybe it's like a year and a half out, and really live your best life. Really understand what you want to experience and what matters to you before the world changes even more with the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. And I know that some of you get worried when I say all this, and I would say that it's okay to have that initial reaction or response, but we're designed to get through things. We're designed to create the next version. We're designed to keep showing up in our light and our courage and to continue to evolve this planet as we can. And for those who have listened to this podcast for a while, you'll probably recall that it was December 2018 when I started doing podcasts for you about the world changes of 2020, right? And you can listen back and look at how accurate that was, because the astrology is accurate. The astrology doesn't lie. People lie, governments lie, institutions lie, things are manipulated, things are twisted and turned, and there's propaganda. Astrology doesn't lie. So the astrology is saying we're going to be going through some other big world changes. This is your heads up. And just like with the energies of 2020, we adapted, we got through it, we learned a lot. We learned perhaps more than we wanted to. We're seeing how things are playing out. And we're also being given opportunities to remain in our power, remain in our sovereignty, to go higher, to look at where we can continue to honor what we need and who we are without sacrificing our power, our creativity, our light, and even our humanness. So we will keep talking about these big topics in the shows to come. And as always, thank you so much for joining me. You can find all of my latest courses and programs at mollymccord.online, where I really want to support you in learning more about your own astrology chart, learning more about how you are energetically designed in this lifetime, using that in fulfilling, satisfying ways, and knowing that it's also part of the beautiful cosmic grid of energies on the planet. So thank you so much for being here. I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday for another podcast episode. Wishing you a beautiful journey ahead, and I'll see you back here soon.